My name is Tom MacMichael. I decided to participate and do this class because I started reading C.S. Lewis when I was just starting to get back to going to church when I was, I don't know, 24, 25. And I had sort of left the church for a while. And by reading a little of Lewis, he did too. And the first thing I read from Lewis was called God in the Dock. And I thought, what in the heck? Of course, this is back when you had to actually buy a book and hold the book, and there wasn't a lot of internet. So I bought that book, and I found out that God in the dock the dock in British means you're on the witness stand. You're in a court. And so Lewis, someone compiled a series of Lewis's essays and speeches kind of about people questioning God. Who are you? You know, why would someone believe in God, you know, in this evil world? And that just got me hooked. I started reading those, and a lot of them were difficult to read, but it was good for me because I was just deciding for myself, I need to do this religion thing because I really believe it, not just because of peer pressure or someone else telling me I ought to, like my parents. And I just got hooked on a lot of Lewis's books by reading that. Oh, who else? Hi, Melinda.
Hello.
Hello.
So,
Well, I'll go next.
Okay.
I decided to join this because I have heard Tom before, and he seems to know so much about C.S. Lewis, and whereas I know some, I'm just anxious to learn more.
Well, I will go next. I'm Katie Ferguson. I noticed Rita did not introduce herself.
That was Rita.
I'm Katie Ferguson, and I decided to do it. I mean, I'm always interested in learning new things, particularly from the comfort of my home and my bunny slippers. And I've always heard about Mere Christianity, and I really knew nothing about it except who it was written by. And I just thought it would be interesting, and I would come and see what it was like.
I'm Lucy Holland, and I'm glad to be here with you all from Mentone this time. I read this book years and years ago, and I was intrigued by the thought of, after some life experience, rereading it now and seeing if I got different insight from it than I might have the first time. This fall, I'm going to go on a pilgrimage, an actual pilgrimage in Spain, and that's a very physical thing, a long walk. And so I thought this would be sort of a mental pilgrimage that I could do, you know, alongside that. So I'm really happy to be here.
We're happy to have you.
I'll go. I am Alice Kenny, living in Cloudland, Georgia. So I'm actually, it's after 8 o'clock for me, which is a good thing, because I work till 6 and drive home and it takes me an hour or whatever. So I had the fortunate experience to be in EFM with Tom, and he often quoted C.S. Lewis or referred to C.S. Lewis, and he had a lot of knowledge about his writings and his theories and his philosophy. And I was fascinated by that, and I'd never read anything by C.S. or even watched the movie, The Chronicles of Narnia. And so when this class came together, I thought, I'm going to join so I can enrich myself and hopefully gain the knowledge and the insights that Tom spoke about, because it was just really good stuff, and I really need that, want that. So.
Well, I'm Beth Fontaine, and I need help with any kind of book that we offer or any kind of class that we offer. So I always get more insight when I can hear other people's viewpoints. I've never read anything by C.S. Lewis, but I'm ready to learn and listen. So thank you.
I'm Kay Cole, my first introduction to C.S. Lewis was a first night in Mobile where Buddy and I had gone to a family, it was an outing and it was on New Year's Eve. And we walked into this drama room and it was a man dressed all in black and he was reading the screw tape letters. I had never heard of that. And we were both intrigued. We sat there for maybe an hour, however long. It was just a dramatic, like a theater. And it was so neat. So after that, I started reading some C.S. Lewis. And my dad had often referred to him in sermons and all. But most of it was too deep for me. It can get really deep really fast. So I've read a lot of bits and pieces. But I thought it would be great to read a book together and share and to get more insight. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Linton Williams, and Annette was with me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I've never read anything by C.S. Lewis, but heard so many people talking about this class and about his books that he's written that we decided we wanted to take the class to learn more about it.
Okay.
Oh,
Well,
hey,
I'm here.
Linda.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Melissa.
I barely made it. I'm sorry. I was still working. I just now got to my mother-in-law's to pick up the kids. And actually, my children know more about C.S. Lewis than I do. Because when we were reading over the fact sheet together, they're like, oh, they're finishing the sentences because they've already been learning so much about him in school. And they've already been reading the Chronicles of Narnia. And Taylor's going into more advanced readings with C.S. Lewis. So just reading about what Mere Christianity is all about, I had no idea. So I'm really looking forward to it. I didn't know it was like his little radio shows and clips and things like that. I've never even read the book. So I'm really looking forward into learning that and trying to learn a little bit more than my kids so they don't have to fill me up.
Well, I'm here like everybody else. I read, I think it was the screw tape letters about the devil.
Your name is Sherry, right?
My name is Sherry, yeah. Years ago, but it's been so long. And C.S. Lewis is so influential. I hear a lot about him and the things that I'm doing lately. And so I wanted to be a part of this. So thank you, Tom, for doing it.
Hi,
Who are you?
I'm Bill Winters. And I'm taking the class because I felt that Tom needed my support as his rector.
You're right.
But I'm also mostly taking it because I've read quite a bit of C.S. Lewis, but I've never read Mere Christianity for some reason. And I like the premise that I've read I never get the preface and the forward. I guess it's the
They're
forward.
both, yeah.
I get where it's going, and it sounds pretty much a lot like I would say, it's in my own way of thinking. It's very Anglican because we can gather people in easily. So anyway, looking forward to the class, Tom. We've been talking about it, I guess, for a year before we finally pulled it off.
Yeah.
But here we are.
Well, hey, I'm Mary MacMichael, and I'm married to the leader, so I get some extra credit. Sure. We have Tess. And I don't think I've read a lot of C.S. Lewis, but I feel I know him very well, seeing as how Tom talks about him a lot. But we did a class on the screw tape letters. So I've read that, and we had used a lot of his thoughts with some of our youth Sundays, doing plays and dramas. And Mere Christianity always eluded me in that the sentences did not make it into my head well enough so that I understood exactly what he was talking about. So I'm And I know Tom said that he taught a class on this, but I must have been somewhere else when he taught this. I think I was doing something else. And so I'm looking forward to reading it and understanding it myself. And so I identify a lot with Kay when she was here about screw tape letters. It was fun doing that one as a class. And but we watched the movies, we watched all the Chronicles of Narnia stuff. I haven't even read those books myself, except for The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And so I'm interested to learn more.
Okay, all right, thank you. I think that's everybody.
Can y'all see
Carl.
Kat and Wesley?
And Kat and Wesley. Can you see
Oh,
them?
Kent West, I don't see him on my screen, sorry.
Oh, you know
screen.
why? Because I'm
Oh, yeah, they
jesting.
are.
She said it says jesting on hers.
Oh, I had to open my screen wider. Okay, there you are.
And I don't think Carl said anything either.
No.
Carl, do you want to go ahead? Or Katie? I don't know if
Katie did.
Okay, we'll
I'm
go-
sorry, he's muted, but I heard him say, go ahead, Kat, from the other room.
Oh, I didn't hear him. Okay.
I heard him come.
Oh, you heard it right. I'm sorry.
Of course, I was muted too, sorry.
Yeah, we are Kat and Wesley. We'll just do this together. And I came alive with C.S. Lewis in my college years. He was an apologetic, and I tried to understand what that meant. And I was all over carrying his torch. I read
All right.
Mere Christianity and the Screw Tape Letters, and I really thought that he was it. Then I sort of fell away from him through the years, yet when we had our children, we read aloud all of the Chronicles of Narnia, every book of the Chronicles of Narnia. And then probably about 5 years ago, just for the heck of it, I reread the Chronicles of Narnia as an adult, and I would suggest anyone doing that. It was,
Yeah, me too.
it was very neat. Very, I saw many things that I had not seen before, but they are wonderful read aloud books to your grandchildren.
I think
Absolutely.
they're on different levels.
Yes. Anyway, I am anxious to reread Mere Christianity, and this afternoon I was looking for my copy and I couldn't find it. So I'm going to need to get another copy. Did you want to say anything? Do you remember? A while?
Wesley.
Glad you're here.
Mm-hmm.
You're glad to be here. Well, I'm going to repeat what all of my friends have said. I want to start with my friend Beth. Beth remarked that she learns more when she's with a group and can listen to the views of others. And so that's the prime reason that I'm here. I want to hear what other people think. And I agree with my friend Rita. I have been very, very fortunate to sit at Tom's knee now for 3 years. It's hard to believe that, isn't it, Tom?
Yeah, hard to believe.
3 years that I've had a chance to listen to Tom and his wife. Can we call her Mary? And listen to Mary and Mary's views. And I know by getting this group together, it's going to be wonderful. And thank you, Tom, for agreeing to do it. Looking forward to it.
You're welcome. Anyone else want to chime in? All right, I'm just going to read a couple of things that some of the stuff was in a handout that I emailed to most of you. And so I want to make sure I have contact information for everyone in case we email something else. This is just kind of my philosophy of a class. It's not instruction, but it's learning by discovery. A group learning experience. We will work methodically through Mere Christianity. We won't cover everything, it's impossible. But we'll discuss issues raised by Lewis. I'll usually have a few paragraphs to put on the screen from the chapter. And anyone else is certainly free to bring up anything else. We'll discover similarities and differences in how the readings impact us personally, our view of life, our faith in God, our journey along our own paths. Emphasis will be on class members' observations and reactions, where Lewis seemed to speak to you or me personally. Discovery to me is a joy. The shared discovery, I think, is even more of a joy. Class members will be invited to share impressions and reactions as each feels led. And I don't want anyone to feel like they have to say something. The only thing you had to say was who you are and why you're here. I have some background that was in the handout, and I just picked out a few things to highlight. I thought maybe you'd like to see some pictures of Lewis. The first one is him a little younger. The middle one is him a little older. Interesting, when I had my 50th birthday, some good friends of mine at our old church gave me a picture of a framed picture of Lewis as if he was if he was my uncle. So that was funny. And the right picture is Lewis with his wife that he married very late in life. And I believe he was only married to her for about 4 years, and then she died of cancer. And her name was Joy Davidman. And there's a movie about their life called The Shadowlands, which is pretty good. Lewis was born in Belfast, 1898. Died November 22nd, 1963, the same day JFK was shot. He's a British writer, and he considered himself a lay theologian. He probably wouldn't have ever approved of his books being used kind of like they are now. He was pretty humble in that way. And I guess that's where it spoke to me. He was like going through this as a normal, everyday person. And I think mere Christianity is supposed to answer questions of just regular people, not theologians. He held academic positions at Oxford University. And I used to say Magdalen, but now Mary and I discovered that's Magdalen. That's pronounced Magdalen College. And then he had a position at Cambridge, also Magdalen College at Cambridge. And I think he was a professor of Renaissance literature. Lewis entered Oxford in 1917 summer term as a student, studying at University College. He joined the Officers Training Corps at the university. On his 19th birthday in 1917, he arrived at the front line in Somme Valley, France. So he was in World War I. He experienced trench warfare for the first time. And I think J.R.R. Tolkien also did. That's why the really dark chapters of The Lord of the Rings and some of the dark chapters of Lewis's books are taken from images that they perceived in World War I. It was just terrible. Lewis was wounded, and 2 of his colleagues were killed by a British shell falling short of its target. In fact, one of his best friends, they made a pact with each other, and they said if either one of them was killed, the other one would take care of their mother. And so Lewis used the royalties from his books to take care of his buddy's mother. Gosh, I forget her name. I'll remember it, but he kept that promise for his whole life. Lewis is best known for his works of fiction, especially the Screwtape Letters that you heard a little about. And I really encourage you to read that if you can get a copy. It's like looking at interacting with humans from the perspective of the devil. And there's a senior demon giving lessons to a junior demon on how to turn humans astray. And it's really interesting. He also wrote the Chronicles of Narnia. And I've read the Space Trilogy, which is his vision of a civilization on another planet. And there's one planet they went to where sin was unknown. And somehow when humans went there, they introduced sin, and the people there called them the bent people, B-E-N-T. So it was like people who didn't fall from sin looking at other people and trying to figure out why they have been corrupted, which was a huge theme of Lewis. The Chronicles of Narnia. He did Christian apologetics, and Mere Christianity is one. Miracles is another. The Problem of Pain is another. Those are all good books, I think, easily available. Lewis's religious life. Lewis and fellow novelist J.R.R. Tolkien were close friends. They both served in the English faculty at Oxford and were active in the informal Oxford literary group known as the Inklings. And that's the one that met at the bar and they drank beer and talked about the work they were working on. Lewis was influenced by Scottish minister George MacDonald. And so I use that as part of my reading list too. I've been reading some of MacDonald's novels and some of his nonfiction. He was a Scottish minister. And he also was very influenced by G.K. Chesterton. This influence was towards imaginative and thoughtful thinking and writing. Lewis loved Chesterton's sense of humor and robust joviality. Most influential writings by Chesterton are two books, Everlasting Man and another one called Orthodoxy. Again, two more books that entered my library and that I read. Lewis was baptized in the Church of Ireland. He fell away from his faith during adolescence and returned to Anglicanism at age 32. Owing to the influence of Tolkien and other friends, he became an ordinary layman of the Church of England. In 1956, Lewis married American writer Joy Davidman, and they had a long kind of romance via mail, letter writing back and forth, and she just loved his writings, and they would quip at each other, and they would try to outsmart each other in their writings. But they were married, and originally Lewis married her just so she could get English citizenship and wouldn't be deported. So it was a legal marriage, but then they kind of fell in love and they went back, and it's all in the movie called The Shadowlands. You should watch it. But she died of cancer 4 years later at the age of 45. And I think I said before, Lewis died in November 63 from kidney failure, 1 week before his 65th birthday. In 2013, on the 50th anniversary of his death, Lewis was honored with a memorial in Poets' Corner at Westminster Abbey. And there's a reference to the movie Shadowlands, and Anthony Hopkins is Lewis. It's pretty good. And Deborah Winger is Joy Davidman. It's not so much a theological movie, but there's a little of that, but it's a movie about their love developing, and then her being very, very ill.
And she was married before and had a son. Has a
Yes.
son, right? And so he's carried on the Lewis.
Yeah, her name was Gresham, and her son's name is Douglas Gresham, and he's still kind of, I think he might be still alive. He's kind of caretaker of the Lewis estate, and he had to give permission for them to do the movies about the Chronicles of Narnia, which Lewis never wanted those made into movies because he thought it would look goofy. You had to have a talking lion and a talking beaver and all these animals. But the movies they did in that respect were very well done. Like the talking lion was not goofy looking to me. And then there's Lewis's autobiography called Surprised by Joy, which you can get to. During World War II, Lewis became a champion of Orthodox Christianity. He saw his mission as a defender in a spiritual warfare that was raging in contemporary culture. I still think it rages. His war service was to fight for what he believed to be true. It's why he traveled to the Royal Air Force bases in 1940-41, giving lectures on Christianity to servicemen. The BBC asked Lewis to broadcast radio talks for them. On August 6, 1941, Lewis began his first series of live radio talks in 2 parts. And this is what we're going to read. This became Mere Christianity. These were an immediate success. Many listeners wrote letters to Lewis, and as if a moral duty, he wrote replies to most of them. And I've read articles, and you can buy books with the letters that Lewis, that they still had in his records. They've made books of letters Lewis wrote to various people. The second series of radio messages was in 1942, the third in 44. And so all that material is what we're going to read as Mere Christianity. Kat mentioned apologetics. Apologetics is just the art of using reasoned arguments to justify an important idea or personal belief. And Lewis would say, you can't do that unless you're really aware of and fluent in the alternative and what the critics would say to him. So Lewis could answer his critics first and foremost because he was he became an atheist. He became an avowed atheist, and you can read that in his autobiography. He tried for years to debunk Christianity and to show how that it was just an outgrowth of superstition from different cultures. And those to me are worth thinking about. So this book is a work of oral literature addressed to people at war. How strange it must have seemed to turn the radio on, which was every day bringing news of death and unspeakable destruction, and hear one man talking in an intelligent, good-humored, and probing tone about decent and humane behavior and the importance of knowing right from wrong. So Lewis was writing to the British people when, for all they knew, there wouldn't be a Britain tomorrow or the next month. I mean, the Germans came really close to beating Britain in World War II. So that is the context. Lewis having been in World War I and seeing all that horror, and then his whole country was facing it again, it seemed like. So when I put it in blue, it's a question for the group. How did you or do you get your ideas of right and wrong?
From parents and teachers, in the Bible, and Emily Post etiquette book.
Right. Yeah. I think it's an important question. And I also got a lot from my parents. And I think it's important to have a good parental upbringing.
Yes.
I think sometimes you can also get an idea of right and wrong when someone in your family has done the wrong thing and your family has to talk about it and deal with it. And you learn the other side, like you were talking about, Tom, the alternative and the consequences of making those wrong choices.
Yeah.
I would also say my friends, because we moved so much when I was a kid, friends were very important, and to have friends meant I learned a lot of right and wrong that way. And then, and then Rita, she always tells me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's important. And Lewis, that's a good point to bring up. Lewis emphasizes friendship as one of the most important loves. There are 4 loves. He wrote a book called The 4 Loves. And friendship, is it philia?
Filio.
Or anyway, he said that is probably the most pure form of love, because it's when you form a strong relationship with someone else because you see the same things, you see the same truths, and that creates an almost immediate bond. And so he writes about that. Who else? Where'd you get your idea of right and wrong?
I think it's a really good question, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. I'd never read the book before, so I did read ahead a little bit and saw that kind of addressed in the first chapter. And it really was some interesting things to think about that he talked about. Where do you get your ideas of what's right and wrong? And I wonder if some of it is not, I do think you can be, have horrible experiences and be screwed up as far as what's right and wrong. But I wonder, in absence of that, if some of it is not instinctive or ingrained, or you realize immediately, okay, this was a good thing and this was not a good thing.
Right.
I just don't know. I think some of it on some level, but then you look back at our ancestors and some of the things that they did that we were so appalled by. I'm not talking about our I'm talking about, the 1600s and the 1400s and even the 1800s. I mean, some of the societal norms that we were just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they were doing that.
Yeah.
Maybe the society that you're around too, it's like my culture. We didn't as a family growing up, we didn't really have a lot of friends who came over, people who we socialized with. They were mostly at church, or you saw them at church, or I mean, I was a Catholic background, so we saw nuns in the convent, and then my parents had, my dad had work friends, and some of his war buddies that he served with. And so I think the culture that they were involved in and that we were also involved in was as one. You know, people thought similarly, or we thought they did. But I think as people are exposed to other ways of living, it may change their views of right and wrong.
I kind of agree with what Mary had earlier said. You know, you can grow up in a household and you're all in the same environment, but all the children can grow up in totally different ways. And for me, you know, my sister was the oldest one, and she was the rebel, and she was always in trouble, always. And so I learned a lot. My mother was divorced, raising 4 children. And so I learned my morals from my mother, but I also feared, you know, oh my goodness, I surely don't want to have to go through what my sister went through, because she was always getting punished. She was always in trouble because she did a lot of bad things. And so I was always the child that wanted to be good and not cause my mother to be worried about me and how I grew up. So, but then also when you get to college and you go away and you live on your own outside of your family, then you could be influenced. If you're a follower, you could jump off the bridge with all the other people, you know, depending on what was going on where you were in school then. And it was a wild, wild west when I went to college. I was not used to anything like that, you know, but I was always a leader, not a follower. But, you know, there's a lot of different things now that are, you know, with the media and with internet and all these other things, you know, there's a lot of different things that now can influence people and how they grow up with knowing right and wrong.
I think parents are at the top of the list of most folks, especially families. But in our case, we went all over the world, socialized, and associated ourselves with so many different people that it influenced us also about what's right, what's the difference in right and wrong. I think that was a great influence.
There is a right and a wrong, so I believe that.
I do too.
I believe that there is a right and there's a wrong, but it is what we learn at home, in the beginning at least.
Foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some people's home life is a lot to be desired. So right and wrong gets a little bit topsy-turvy.
That's right. If you are too much oriented towards what's happening in your own family and immediate family anyway, and that's all you get exposed to your early years. Sometimes you get that wrong idea about which is right and wrong.
I always think of right and wrong as it's always linked to how does my action or my words affect that other human being. And if it causes them pain or distress or unhappiness, then that's a wrong thing. And I learned that in my family of origin, because witnessing my parents and their troubled relationship, it taught me that I did not want to be like that. And so my right was about being kind and gentle and thoughtful and soft, you know, and, you know, easygoing and whatever. And the wrong was to make people upset, make people hurt, make people feel bad. So so my upbringing was like, yeah, I learned that from my parents, but it was almost like in reverse. Like, don't do as I'm see, do the opposite. And that's how I established right and wrong.
Also,
Yeah, that,
you know, we were talking earlier about how people are exposed to their surroundings. Like, let's say in elementary school, back then they mainstreamed everyone. It wasn't like today. And I remember in second grade, Bobby, I don't remember his last name, was blind. And so we all had recess at the same time, every classroom in the school. So it was like everybody out on the playground. And I remember always gravitating to that blind little boy because there weren't many friends, people coming around to play with him because he was blind. And so I was drawn to wanting to always be his friend and to be kind and good to him. And so I always played with him. And then also growing up, the people across the street from us, the Pavelzik family in St. Petersburg, Florida, they had a daughter, Karen. She was like in her early 20s, and she was mentally retarded. And I would go over, and I don't know if you call it playing with her. You know, she was hard to understand, but I would spend time with her. And they also had a son, Danny, that had cerebral palsy. And so, you know, we would try to ride bikes with him. He was very strong. And then also crossing the field to play with my friend Debbie Carter. Next door was another girl named Debbie that had she had cerebral palsy, and we would swim with her in her pool. And her mother was so grateful that we would come and play with her. So I think also you can be influenced by other people also and their surroundings, and you want to be a better person. When you're young, you probably don't even know all that's happening. When you get older and you look back, and then you go, wow, I'm really so thankful that God brought them into my life for a reason, because it taught me tolerance and being kind and good. And so that can also play into it also.
yeah, several people have mentioned that it can be some of the bad things, some of the negative experiences you have that teach you right from wrong. You almost instinctively see a wrong and you know it's wrong. I had a mentally delayed cousin, and boy, when he got picked on, did we know that was wrong? Or, I mean, it just hit you. And so C.S. Lewis is going to talk a little bit more about that. Some of this right and wrong is written on our hearts. This idea that we know is something God has given us directly. And I think y'all have hit on some of that already. He's going to talk more about that. Anything else? Anybody else?
I would just like to say that as it seems a continuum, our understanding of right and wrong, and I feel like we have the responsibility to constantly ask ourselves, you know, that question. When you're young, I feel like right and wrong is just given from authority, and you just accept it. And interestingly, as an adult, you look back and you say, well, that I accepted that as a norm, but today it really was not so right. I mean, you know, what say gender issues, like, you know, just the strong male influence, you know, I would not say that that was the absolute right way to have for our society. Maybe we needed that at the time after World War I and II. I don't really know. I'm not making a conjecture there, but I guess the point is authority isn't always right. We have a responsibility to look personally at the
even in Jesus' day. I mean, the parables were teaching us how sometimes the first have to be last. You know, Jesus often turned things on its head. I think C.S. Lewis understood that. That's kind of what you're saying. All right. There's got a couple more questions here. C.S. Lewis was was once described by a friend as a man in love with the imagination. He believed that complacent acceptance of the status quo reflects more than a failure of nerve. In mere Christianity, no less than in his more fantastical works, the Narnia stories and science fiction novels, Lewis betrays a deep faith in the power of the human imagination to reveal the truth about our condition and bring us to hope. The longest way around is the shortest way home is the logic of both fable and faith. That's from, I think, from the preface of the book. So next question, when are you best able to use your imagination? And the second part, does it reveal truth to you?
I'm just going to throw something out there quickly. I think my imagination is most rampant when I'm going to sleep and I'm dreaming. Very imaginative in my dreams. And then when I think back about those dreams, there is always some truth that even though the dream was fanciful, there's always some truth that maybe I needed to sort out a little bit better.
You know, Cat, dreams are God's hidden language. If you notice in the Bible, many of God's speaking to people are through dreams. So I think that's pretty apt of you to recognize that. Number one, and number two, for me, it's not just my imagination. It is God, to me, it's God's self revealing God's self through these things that you don't even think about being God. I have learned that through spiritual direction, which I have been doing now for about 4 years. And it's amazing the way God reveals God's self to us if we're just open to it. So imagination is part of that, at least it is to me.
Am I on?
Yes.
This is kind of crazy, I guess, but I really like playing with words and using words, and my imagination comes when I'm writing. And when my best writing has been the last few years, and I give thanks to Melinda for letting me do it and the rest of you for allowing me to do it, but frankly, it's doing the E-flash. As silly as some of them are, I put a lot of my imagination into those things, and I see God work, and God has shown me a lot of things as I've written those letters on how to be positive and how to bring the best out of things and how to bring kindness, try to bring kindness into the congregation. And I get all of that as I write my silly E-flash each week. Some are short and some are long. It depends how creative I am that week or that day. But anyway, when I'm doing that, when I'm working and opening myself up to God, what do you want me to put on this paper about Melinda having a hard time finding volunteers and saying something really stupid about it, but anyway, to make sense. And so anyway, that's enough. But it does reveal truth to me, as the next question goes, by making it, bringing it to real, concrete things. And even though they may not be the best written and a little chaotic at points, I really find the truth of God in writing the E-flash.
Yeah, and I think they have a certain amount of joy to them, you know, in conveying factual stuff that has to get done in a joyful manner so that you get your point across so that people will volunteer to do things.
Rita and Bill, there's some kind of humming coming from where you all are. That's why y'all keep getting muted.
It's a ceiling fan, probably.
I'm sorry?
Well, I think it's the ceiling fan. Hold on.
Okay.
We'll see if that's it.
Oh, yeah.
Is that better?
Oh, wow, yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Wow.
That's the loudest ceiling fan I've ever heard.
Wow, sounded like a motor in there. I mean, a loud one.
There is a motor in it. We'll know that from now on. We don't mean to buzz you
Yeah.
out.
That's okay. I use my imagination best when I'm with my 4.5-year-old, and it's not 4, it's 4.5.
Oh,
Daughter, and she just loves pretending stuff.
mm.
But you know what? When I'm talking to her, and I have to catch myself when I'm saying, I do see a truth in how your relationship with my relationship with her better be genuine. It can't be glib. I can't play around with her emotions. You know, she's 4.5. I'm trying to see eye to eye with her and have fun, if that makes sense. But I'd say that's when I'm able to use my imagination. And I think it does reveal truth.
Yeah.
And she's learning how to tell when we're being real and when it's fantastical.
Yeah.
Fantasy. I think the time I'm most imaginative is when I'm problem solving, when something is not going well and you just have to change course. And you have to put a good spin on it so that it's going to work out.
What she's trying to say is Tom doesn't like to change course.
Figure something out.
Yeah, we got to figure it out.
Well, mine may not be when I'm best able to use my imagination. I feel like I used to use my imagination before children. And so I'm a bit tired with creativity and imagination and things like that. And they kind of take over that role for me. But there's a lot of times when I'm just driving in the car or I'm working on a chore or doing something like that. And it's kind of quiet and I'm quiet. And I'm just thinking about, kind of like Mary said, problem solving, but just thinking about the things before me, like trying to think about how I can use gifts that God has given me to, and what I would like to do. Like I would love to be able to go to the nursing homes and visit with people and to visit with my family more often, or to do certain things. So I just kind of start imagining what are some of the things that I can do that I would really enjoy doing. And I often sometimes, so I look into the future and I kind of think about what some things I can do and I kind of plan ahead. But then I also look back at things that I've done and I think, could I have done that a different way? And I kind of, in a way, people could say, oh, you're overthinking that. But I really just want to try to learn from, and not necessarily that anybody is pointing that out to me, like, oh, you did this wrong, or you didn't do this right, or you could have done this better, but I'm doing that to myself. So in a way, like I'm just kind of using my imagination to think about, well, what if it happened this way, or what if it happened this way, and what could I do for this? And I feel like that does bring a truth about in a lot of ways. It just helps you to see a situation in somebody else's point of view, or in a different point of view. And then maybe it just makes you make better decisions.
Yeah. Anybody else? The next part of the forward said, like Soren Kierkegaard, another guy on my reading list before him, and contemporary Dietrich Bonhoeffer, Lewis seeks in Mere Christianity to help us see the religion with fresh eyes as a radical faith whose adherents might be likened to an underground group gathering in a war zone, a place where evil seems to have the upper hand, to hear messages of hope from the other side. And that's where I think C.S. Lewis's certain circumstances, I think, influenced how he wrote. So the question is, what gives you hope for the world? I mean, I really feel like we're again in a place where evil seems to have the upper hand in lots of different ways. So what gives us hope for the world or for our life? I think my friends do. When I feel like hopeless, like the world is just evil, then if I actually think of my friends, the people I really respect, it's the world is not evil. There's a lot of good, but I can be drawn away from thinking that. That's for me.
That is certainly what helps me. Because I can easily go down a rabbit hole where I can't see that light on the end of the tunnel, but yet when I gather with others and of like mind, and those sometimes of a dissident mind, anyway, it helps me get through it.
Some things that help me are reading scripture, whenever I feel down or I feel like there's no hope for the world. Just going back to a lot of the scriptures that are promises. They're just true promises, and we know they are. And then like Rita said, gathering, it just always makes me feel so good to be in person, in worship, to hear the sermons and the music. I can still remember, I can't remember the song right now, it just escapes me, but the time that Bishop Key came in with that flowing giant red cape, a red stole down the aisle, and Rita was singing. And I think we sang a similar song this past Sunday. So those type of praise hymns really give me hope and give me joy.
Yeah.
Sometimes for me, I can be bombarded from all the different things that are happening in the world and can be overwhelming. And then I have to sit quietly and just sit still. And then I try to write at least 3 things that I'm thankful for that day. And it helps me to detox. In other words, it just helps me exhale, helps me breathe and get through and try to be thankful.
Sounds like the second part of the question, is it difficult for you to see important ideas with fresh eyes? And why or why not? It is difficult, but I think it's possible and maybe really important.
I think it's really, I'm a very hopeful person. I think of myself as a very positive person, a cheerful person, and I'm not sure if it's because I haven't had an awful life. Yes, there was hard times growing up. My mother was not always my best friend. And there were some things that were hard, but somehow or another, it wasn't as hard as I think some people do have it. I don't have a chronic illness. I'm not in constant pain. I haven't had a horrible accident, so that I've lost my limbs. I mean, there are just so many horrible things that people have to overcome. And those sorts of situations make, and if they're hopeful in that, then I wonder if my hope would still be strong if those things happened to me, or would I just, curl up and be in a corner somewhere and go away. You know what I'm saying? And so to sit with someone who has had it really hard and they are depressed and down and dire, to offer hope in the most gentle and kind way, listening to them is what I would hope I could do, and not trivialize, saying, oh, things are going to get better. Because, oh my gosh, some things are not better. And to, I think, be with others who have a harder time of hope is important.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what Mary's saying is, the way I think of it is, and I think it's very biblical, is you have to learn how to take your eyes off yourself. I know I can wallow in my own problems, and it's almost stifling, it's almost paralyzing. And I think Jesus tried to get us to take our eyes off ourselves. And you find more joy by, I think, being real with other people and being involved and being there available. And I think that helps with the fresh eyes, help you see things with fresh eyes.
Sometimes when I feel bothered by something in life, I will often say to myself, well, what if this was my last day in my life? How can I act? How can I engage with others? How can I take in all that I'm seeing and doing, in a different way, because it'll be the last time I get to experience it. And that totally takes all my yucky stuff and my black cloud and throws it away, because then I say, I can do this. I can get through whatever I'm, feeling heavy by, because it's going to figure itself out. Everything always does. And that's how I sometimes can see important ideas differently. I, just talk myself into imagining that I don't have much more time on this earth, and how am I going to spend it?
See, Lewis wrote an essay called "What If Tonight Was the World's Last Night." You might want to look that one up. All right, let's see where we at. Okay, I think we're ending. Anyone else have anything at all? Because that's the end of my slideshow. And so this will give you an idea. We're gonna read the next 4 chapters. They're not long. It's only 10 or 12 pages, I think. I mean, it's not a really long book, but a lot of the paragraphs you're going to need to read more than once, at least I did. And so what I would like to do is use this kind of format, and maybe I'll put on the screen like this some things that will stir to stir an argument, or to stir a discussion. I think Lewis was a master at provoking argument. And I use the word argument not as a negative. I mean, it's things that people need to digest. I think there's things we need to talk out. And it's my opinion, because lots of us have the same questions and we may never ask them of anybody. And so that's what I like this class to be able to do. And I think C.S. Lewis was good at being able to do that.
Let me ask a question.
Go ahead, Mary.
Yeah. Book 1, you say it's 1 through 4, but my book has chapters 1 through 5.
I have the Kindle.
The last chapter, like each title, the last one is "We Have Cause to Be Uneasy."
Okay, go ahead and read 1 through 5 if that's a good, but I don't know if we can get through that much. So let me look at it. But so read 1 through 5. It probably all addresses the same kind of issue. There's 33 chapters and we have 9 more weeks. So I don't want us to rush. I don't want us to rush past something that people are interested in. So we won't cover it exhaustively, but I want to cover what people are interested in. So how's that sound?
Yeah, maybe this is an old book.
Mine's like that too.
Well,
Mine is too. Yeah.
Okay, I'm sure that's probably right. I did have it as chapter 1 through 3. Then I looked at the heading of 4 and I said, well, I better throw in 4. So that's my mistake. So it isn't gonna be that much to read all 5 of those chapters, I don't think. And if you have a particular paragraph, you can type something up on your computer and you could share a screen of some quote you like. So I don't have to be the only one to do that, but I'll pick, let's say 4 or 5 provocative sentences or paragraphs, and we'll look at them next week. And it'll be on the idea of right and wrong as a clue to the meaning of the universe. And we'll have that all cleared up by the end of next week. All right, any other comments? Or I think I have everyone except Lenton and Annette's email. I have a roster and I will send the roster to everyone. So you'll have people's email and names in the class.
There was Caroline. Caroline was down in the corner and she came in late. So
Yeah.
Where did she go? Did she leave us?
I guess she's gone again.
Yeah, it's after 9 where she is.
Right, and she did say she had another study that did not end
Right.
until 15 minutes after we began.
Right. And if you don't come one week, don't feel like you can't come the next week, because it'll be like tonight. We'll have things that you can just read on the screen and we can talk about it. And it's a way to get to know each other and to share our different walks of faith and our different journeys through all this. I just think C.S. Lewis was a good one to help us do that.
We'll send you a post. We'll send everybody a note that shows where the recordings are posted, so you can go back and look at them anytime you want. They should be up there by we think by noon tomorrow. Today's will be up there by noon tomorrow. Tom, could I answer your last question, because I thought it was wonderful. Where do you find hope?
Yeah.
You said one thing that I thought was, to me, resonates, and that's with friends. But the other thing is that a lot of the folks in EFM have shared with us over the 7 years that we've been doing it here some very wonderful ideas. And one of the simplest ideas was laid out by Ben Charette one day when he told the story of the fellow walking along the beach and he threw the starfish back in the water. And what he was doing was saving starfish, he told his companion. And the companion said, you know, that's a pretty big task. You're not going to really get much done. He said, it made a difference to that one. When I look at the world and when I look at where we've come from and where we're going, this world has faced a lot of challenges and prevailed. History, with all of its challenges, I think, teaches one lesson, and that is that there's always hope. There's always hope. And you maybe go through some tough ones, but think about what's just happened in the 20th century and now the 21st century. I think we can see hope there. And Tom, thank you. Wonderful, wonderful.
Welcome. Thank you to everybody.
Yes.
And I hope to see everyone next week.
Thank you.
Class. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks
Like
everyone for coming.
Good night, John Boy.
Good night, John Boy.
Tom, I
Good night to you all.
have a question that everybody else won't necessarily be interested in. I don't want to take anybody else's time, so y'all can go in again. I just wanted to know this sort of basically, what is the 4 loves about? Because that's one that I have not read.
It's the 4, let's see, in the Greek, there's 4 words for love: eros, philia, storge,
Agape.
agape. And so he explains it's a short book, but he goes into detail on all the 4 different kinds of loves and how that relates to the Christian tradition and to Christ. And it's very, God-centered. And C.S. Lewis just one of those people, he just feels like friendship is probably the one that which I'm not surprised, because he didn't find eros until he was 56, but he found God through his friends.
Yeah.
Literally. And then he wrote about it.
So
it's not easy. It's not easy reading. C.S. Lewis is not easy reading. I find myself reading each paragraph several times. But
yeah. Oh, wait, there's Sherry.
Thank you, Tom. It was great. I'll be back.
You're welcome. Okay, great. All right, everyone, sleep tight.
Okay.
All right. Good night.
Bye-bye, Annette.
Bye.